Everyone in the private conference suite felt the shift in the air the moment she walked in. Special Agent Nia Hart, the woman whispered about inside federal halls, the kind of agent criminals fear before they even see the badge. But billionaire Adrian Cade didn't believe in fear. He believed in control, and he believed no one could touch him. That changed in under 60 seconds. When Nia quietly placed a classified folder on his table, Adrian sensed something he'd never felt before, a threat he couldn't measure. Her silence cut deeper than any accusation. Her eyes read him like a crime scene, and for the first time in his life, Adrian reacted, not with logic, but with panic. His hand shot out. Fabric tore. The room gasped. And yet, in just moments, he would be on his knees. What did Nia know that could break a man like him? Adrian Cade liked to say he could feel weakness before a person even spoke. He claimed it was instinct, some predator's gift he was born with. But on the morning Agent Nia Hart walked into his glass fortress of an empire, he felt something entirely different. Something sharp, something cold, something he didn't recognize and therefore didn't trust. The boardroom was silent when she stepped inside, not because she demanded it, but because the room reacted to her the way a forest reacts to a sudden drop in temperature. A kind of alert stillness spread, a tension nobody could name. Adrian watched her from the head of the table, fingers drumming lazily against polished obsidian. "So this is the famous audit," he said, voice smooth enough to slice metal. "I expected more agents, or at least a power suit." Nia didn't bother sitting. She laid her folder on the table with the kind of precision that made the executives shift in their chairs. "I don't need a crowd," she said, "just access." Her tone was level, unhurried, but every syllable felt deliberate, as if she was drawing invisible circles around him that he wasn't meant to cross. Adrian smirked, leaning back in his chair. "You'll find everything perfectly in order." She didn't answer, and that bothered him. People always reacted to him. They stuttered, apologized, tried to impress. Nia did none of that. She just opened the folder and began flipping through pages, her eyes moving with quiet calculation. One of Adrian's senior managers coughed nervously. Another whispered, "That's her? The Heart Method woman?" Someone else added, "Cade's in trouble now." Adrian shot them a glare that froze their throats shut. But even that didn't give him the satisfaction he was used to, because Nia wasn't looking at the staff. She wasn't looking at the folder. She was looking at him. Not intimidated. Not impressed. Analyzing. Adrian's jaw tightened. "Do you always stare at people like that?" "Only when they're lying," she answered. A few executives lowered their eyes. Someone quietly exhaled. Adrian's heartbeat stumbled for one uneven beat, but he hid it behind a laugh. "You don't know me well enough to make that assumption." "I know your numbers," she replied simply, "and numbers don't lie." Adrian leaned forward, voice soft and dangerous. "Be careful with accusations, Agent Hart. They tend to boomerang." Nia closed the folder. "So does guilt." For a moment, the air changed, not pushed by Adrian this time, but by her. He hated that. He stood abruptly, his reflection splitting across the tall windows around him. "Let me make something clear," he said. "This company is the backbone of 3 major industries. Audits are routine, but disrespect isn't." Nia stepped closer, stopping just inches from his desk. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't move aggressively. She simply existed with a level of certainty Adrian had never encountered. "You're not being audited," she corrected. "You're being investigated." A ripple went through the room. Someone dropped a pen. Someone else muttered, "Oh God." Adrian swallowed, but too late. She'd already seen it. The tiny, involuntary flicker of fear. "What exactly are you hoping to find?" he asked, chin lifting, trying to recover the upper hand. Naya opened another file, one with redacted lines and federal timestamps. Hidden transfers, ghost subsidiaries, shell charities registered under names connected to violent groups overseas. She paused. Shall I continue? The boardroom felt smaller, hotter, like the walls were inching inward. Adrian forced a laugh. You must be joking. None of that is tied to me. Not directly, she said. But indirectly? She slid a document toward him. You left fingerprints. He glanced at the others. They were sweating, shifting, avoiding eye contact. He hated them in that moment. Hated their weakness. Hated their silence. Hated that none of them knew how to deflect Nia's gaze. He snatched the file away. This is nonsense. Fabricated connections. Then you won't mind if I pull your internal servers, she replied smoothly. His eyes narrowed. On whose authority? On mine. Her badge flashed once in the sterile light, gold, sharp-edged, carrying enough power to crush the careers of every man at the table. The room inhaled, and Adrian felt his pulse spike. He stepped toward her. You think you can walk in here and— I don't think, she said. I verify. The way she said it, it wasn't a threat. That would have been easier to handle. It was a promise. For the next hour, she moved through his office floors like a surgeon through tissue. Quiet, precise, unhurried. The staff tried to offer help, but she ignored their attempts. She wasn't here to collaborate. She was here to dissect. Executives whispered behind her back. She doesn't blink. She doesn't smile. She doesn't break. And when she asked for secure access to Level 3, archives, a ripple of panic ran through management. That was the floor where Adrian buried things. Data trails, sensitive transactions, anything that could fracture his public persona. Adrian intercepted her in the hallway. That area requires advance clearance. I already have it, she said, presenting a digital warrant so fresh the timestamp still glowed. His breath hitched. She had prepared, anticipated him, outplayed him before the game even started. For the next 3 hours, the entire building operated on a strange kind of half-breath, as if waiting for the punchline of a joke that wasn't funny at all. Nia reviewed servers, cross-checked timestamps, examined old payroll patterns, and every time Adrian tried to interrupt, she spoke over him with clipped efficiency. Step back, Mr. Cade. I'll need silence. Stop hovering. No one had ever spoken to him like that. By dusk, she had filled pages of notes, each one making him more uneasy. But then, as she reached for a sealed envelope buried behind a decoy report, Adrian felt a jolt in his chest. He recognized that envelope. He remembered exactly what was inside, and he had thought he destroyed every copy years ago. Her fingers brushed the corner of it, and he realized she already knew. She didn't say it out loud. She didn't need to. The look she gave him was enough to crack something deep inside him, the quiet kind of fear that comes when a man knows his past is no longer buried. Nia closed her files. We're not finished. Adrian tried to speak. Nothing came out. She walked past him, the hallway seeming colder behind her. As the doors shut, the staff finally began to breathe again, but Adrian stayed frozen, staring at the elevator she disappeared into, feeling the first tremor of a downfall he never saw coming, because she had the right files now, the right instincts, and the right authority. And when the audit order arrived later that night, an emergency request requiring Adrian's immediate cooperation in a high-security room, he understood one thing with perfect clarity. He wouldn't be facing Nia Hart in public anymore. He'd be facing her alone, and this time, there would be nowhere left to hide. The lock slid into place behind them with a heavy, decisive click, the kind of sound that told both of them there was no turning back. Even the air felt different in the sealed evidence suite, thicker, colder, almost metallic, as if the walls themselves were listening. And in the center of that hush stood Adrian Cade and Agent Nia Hart, Two forces packed into a room far too small for their collision. Nia didn't look at him. She didn't need to. She spread the files across the steel table like a surgeon preparing instruments. Adrian's eyes twitched with every page she touched. He had built skyscrapers, toppled rivals, and bought silence from people with twice her authority. Yet she was the first person who made him feel like the floor beneath him wasn't stable. She opened a restricted folder without hesitation. Adrian stepped closer. "That file isn't part of your clearance." "You don't decide my clearance," she replied, her voice flat, almost bored. The fluorescent lights caught the edge of her badge as she turned a page. "And if you keep interrupting, we'll be here all night." His jaw tightened. She didn't raise her tone. She didn't look up. And somehow that made him burn hotter than any direct challenge. He circled behind her, hands clasped like he was trying to anchor himself. "You're overstepping," he said. "Those documents contain proprietary—" "They contain evidence," she cut in. "Possibly criminal, possibly federal. We'll find out." The way she said "we'll find out" made something cold scrape up his spine. On the wall, the status lights blinked red. Sealed room, no signals, no interruptions. Just truth, or whatever could survive under this much pressure. Adrian leaned his palms on the table. "Give me the file." Nia finally paused. Slowly, she lifted her gaze to him. Her expression wasn't angry. It was clinical, like she was evaluating a patient who didn't know his diagnosis yet. "You're not entitled to it," she said, "and you're wasting my time." The dismissal hit him harder than an insult. He felt heat rise under his collar. "You're forgetting whose building you're standing in," he said. Nia turned a page. "No, you're forgetting whose country you're standing in." For a moment, the air between them sparked, two storms colliding. Adrian took a slow breath, then lowered his voice into something razor-thin. "I'm not afraid of you, Agent Hart." She didn't blink. "You should be afraid of the truth." That was the moment something in him cracked. Small at first, just a hairline fracture through control he'd held for decades, but it spread fast, because she was close. Too close. She flipped another page and Adrian saw it. A number he recognized. A timestamp he thought erased. A transaction that should have been dead and buried. The ground inside him shifted. He stepped forward. Too fast. "Give me the file," he hissed. She didn't even look up. "No." "Agent Hart." "No." The word struck him like a slap. Not loud, not emotional, just final. His breathing changed, shallow and sharp. "Hand. Me. That. File." She kept reading, and his restraint finally snapped. He lunged across the table. His hand shot out, gripping the collar of her shirt as he reached for the folder. The sound of fabric tearing exploded through the room, a violent, ugly rip that bounced off the metal walls and cut through the silence like a scream. Nia staggered back one step, the torn edge of her shirt falling open at the shoulder. Adrian froze, realizing what he'd done, but too late to undo it. The whole room seemed to inhale. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then Nia, straightened, slow, and controlled, her breathing steady despite the shock of the moment. She didn't raise a hand to cover the rip. She didn't retreat. She simply stared at him. Her expression shifted, just slightly, but enough to chill him. It wasn't fear, wasn't anger. It was something far more dangerous. A look that said, "Your end has already begun." Adrian felt his mouth go dry. He opened it. No words came. She stepped closer, closing the space he thought he commanded. Her voice dropped to a low, almost whispering tone. "Do you realize what you just did?" His tongue felt stiff. "I reacted." "No," she said. "You revealed yourself." Her calmness, her terrifying calmness, unnerved him more than any shouting match could have. She held the folder tightly, knuckles pressing white against the edges. Not afraid, not rattled, in control. For the first time since childhood, Adrian felt something primal and unwelcome surge beneath his ribs. Fear. He tried to mask it with anger. "You provoked me?" "And you failed the test," she answered. "What test?" Her eyes pinned him. "The one that proves guilt." His pulse spiked, hammering against his throat. The lights above flickered, or maybe his vision did. He stepped back, breathing unevenly. "You're making a mistake," he whispered. "No," she said. "I'm documenting one." Another blow, this one invisible but brutal. His heartbeat thudded louder than the silence. Loud enough he wondered if she could hear it. Loud enough he wondered if the walls could. Nia lifted the torn collar slightly, inspecting it like evidence. "Assault in a federal room," she murmured. "You really thought that was a smart move?" He felt trapped. Animals cornered tend to lash out again, but his limbs felt strangely heavy. His breath hitched. "I'm not your enemy," he tried. "Yes," she said. "You are." The lights above hummed. His vision swam. Something was wrong, something inside him. He blinked hard and steadied himself against the table. "Agent Hart, She frowned. Not in fear, just confusion. "What's wrong with you?" His throat tightened, his chest constricted. A sudden, crushing pressure spread across his ribs. He tried inhaling deeper, but the air wouldn't come. It felt like invisible hands squeezing harder. Adrian reached out to steady himself, but his fingers barely brushed the table before his knees buckled. The world tilted. His breath fractured. And for the first time in his adult life, Adrian Cade could not command his own body. Nia stepped toward him on instinct even as he collapsed to the floor, gasping through clenched teeth. His vision blurred. The ceiling bent into strange angles. "Nia," he choked out, his voice barely a thread. Her eyes widened, not with pity but with dawning realization. Whatever was happening to him wasn't anger, wasn't panic. It was something far worse. Before he could form another word, his body betrayed him completely. The room darkened at the edges. His heartbeat thrashed against his ribs like it wanted out, and as consciousness slipped from him, the last thing he saw was Nia's face hovering above him. Calm, alert, already shifting from investigator to something else entirely. Then the darkness swallowed him whole. Adrian hit the floor hard enough that the shock ricocheted up his spine, but the pain barely registered. What he did feel was the terrifying emptiness inside his lungs, like someone had cracked open his chest and scooped the air out by hand. His vision tunneled, shrinking the room into a narrow corridor of smeared light and shadows. And in the center of it, he saw Nia, standing frozen for only a fraction of a second before instinct snapped through her like electricity. She dropped to her knees beside him. He tried to push himself up, but his arms trembled violently, refusing to obey. "What did you do?" he gasped, each word peeled out of him like a dying secret. Nia didn't dignify it with an answer. Her fingers were already on his neck, finding his pulse. It hammered wildly, too fast, too shallow. She leaned over him, her torn collar brushing his cheek, her breath steady while his came in shredded pieces. "Adrian, look at me," she said. "Stay with me." The command wasn't harsh. It wasn't gentle, either. It was a tether, firm enough to grab onto, soft enough to trust. But his mind spun in the opposite direction. Poison. It had to be. His brain spiraled into the darkest corners of his past because that was how he dealt with threats. He eliminated them, silenced them. Why wouldn't she do the same? "You poisoned." His voice cracked mid-word, collapsing with him. Nia leaned closer, her expression narrowing into something sharp. "If I wanted you dead, you wouldn't be talking right now." A brutal truth, delivered like cold water. Adrian tried to breathe, but the inhale caught halfway. Panic thundered in his chest. He clawed at his tie, ripping it off with shaking fingers as if fabric was the enemy strangling him. Nia grabbed his hands. "Stop, you're making it worse." "Can't breathe. I know, I've got you." Her voice didn't shake. Her hands didn't tremble. She guided him flat on his back, one palm steady on his sternum, the other opening the top buttons of his shirt to let him breathe. For a brief, surreal moment, the roles flipped so violently he couldn't keep up. 5 minutes ago, he had been the one tearing fabric, trying to dominate her. Now, she was the one opening his shirt, not in powerlessness but pure control. His eyes rolled back, and a wave of darkness dragged at the edges of his mind. "Hey." Her voice cut through the haze. "Eyes open. Look at me." He tried. Her face came into view, sharply focused, framed by the torn collar he'd damaged. A symbol of his worst impulse, now hanging inches from the person trying to save his life. "What happening?" His words slurred. "Cardiac episode," she muttered, checking his pulse again. "Triggered by adrenaline and stupidity." He would have laughed if oxygen wasn't burning him alive. Her knee pressed into the floor as she leaned over him, bracing him with surprising strength. He felt her grip shift to his wrist, grounding him. Something about her touch, not soft, not comforting but brutally present, pulled him away from the edge of panic. "Adrian, listen," she said. "You need to slow your breathing." "Trying." His chest seized. "It's not listening." "Then listen to me." Her tone hardened. "In through your nose, now." He inhaled, sharp and ragged. "Out through your mouth." The exhale shook like it was fighting to stay inside him. Again. He obeyed, not because he trusted her, not because he wanted to, but because his body was failing him, and she was the only anchor left. Small micro-currents of fear darted through him. Fear of the attack. Fear of losing control. Fear of the woman whose calmness felt sharper than any weapon. The predator inside him clawed at the walls of his mind, furious and helpless. Nia reached for her phone with her free hand. "Medical emergency in Suite 9. Cardiac distress. Send paramedics now." Then she tossed it aside and returned her focus to him. "Stay awake." Adrian swallowed hard, throat dry as dust. "Why?" "Help me," he managed. "Because you're a human being," she said. He stared at her through the tears forming from the pressure in his chest. Nobody had spoken to him like that, stripping away the money, the power, the fear people carried around him. Just a human being. How insulting. How freeing. How terrifying. His fingers curled weakly into the fabric of her sleeve, the closest thing he could reach. She didn't pull away. "What did you find?" he whispered, unable to stop the question. "Not now," she said. That scared him more than any answer. He coughed, breath breaking in half. A surge of pain shot down his arm, fast and hot, his face twisted, eyes clenching shut. "Talk to me," Nia said urgently. "Where does it hurt?" "Chest. Left side." His voice cracked. "Can't feel fingers." She pressed 2 fingers against his jaw to keep his head upright. Her voice shifted, lower, steadier, controlled. "It's okay. I've got you." He believed her. For the first time in his life, he believed someone whose power he couldn't buy. The sound of footsteps thundered outside the sealed door. Paramedics shouted orders. The lock disengaged. Nia didn't move until the EMTs were kneeling beside him, attaching equipment, lifting him onto a stretcher. His vision flickered, then steadied. He watched her through the frantic movement. Her shirt still torn, her breathing steady, her expression unreadable. Just before they pushed him out the door, he reached toward her. Only a few inches. Only enough to reveal that some part of him, some terrified, unraveling part, didn't want her to disappear from view. "Nia." His voice was barely there. "Don't. Leave." She didn't answer, but she stepped closer, just enough that he could see her clearly as they wheeled him away. And in that fading moment, he realized the most terrifying truth of all. She saved him. She, the woman he tried to overpower, the woman he feared for what she knew, the woman he couldn't intimidate, silence, or bend, the woman who now held his life in her hands without ever asking for it. Darkness finally pulled him under, but not before one last thought lodged itself in his mind. When he woke up, he would still have to face Nia Hart, and she would know everything he had tried to hide. Adrian woke with the kind of jolt a man feels when he isn't sure if he's waking from a nightmare or into one. The hospital ceiling glowed a sterile white, humming faintly with electricity. For a moment he lay still, waiting for the world to rearrange itself into something familiar. It didn't. His chest ached, his throat burned, and when he finally tried to sit up, the room spun. Slow, heavy, punishing, but none of that frightened him as much as the thought that shot through his mind like a blade. Where is Nia Hart? He hated how fast the question came, hated the vulnerability knotted beneath it. But the moment his vision cleared enough to see the doorway, he was already demanding, "Get Agent Hart, now." Not a request, a need, a compulsion he didn't understand and couldn't hide. When she arrived, she didn't rush inside. She stepped into the room like she was entering a hostile negotiation. Shoulders squared, face unreadable, every movement precise. The torn shirt was gone, replaced by a crisp, dark blazer, a physical reminder that she had put herself back together, while he was the one lying broken. Adrian swallowed. "I need to speak with you." Her gaze flicked to the monitors, then back to him. "You're stable," she said. "Good." No warmth, no softness, just efficiency. "Say what you need to say." He hesitated, not out of fear of her, but fear of his own voice cracking. "I'm sorry." Nia didn't blink. "For which part?" His throat tightened. "For what happened in the evidence room." "You'll need to be specific," she said. He exhaled shakily. "For grabbing you. For ripping your shirt. For losing control." The words tasted wrong, not because they were lies, but because they felt too small to cover the damage. Still, Nia's expression didn't shift. "You assaulted a federal agent," she said plainly. "You don't get points for apologizing." Adrian flinched. No board member, no politician, no CEO had ever spoken to him that way. But she wasn't done. "And offering me money won't fix it," she added. "I wasn't going to—" "Yes, you were." His jaw clenched, because she was right. That had been his instinct since boyhood. Throw money at the wound until it stops bleeding. But Nia's presence stripped those habits down to something ugly. He closed his eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you." She didn't look away. "You meant to control me. Hurting me was part of that." A flush crept up his neck. Shame. Real shame. Something he hadn't felt in years. He shifted his gaze toward the window, unable to hold hers. Outside, the sun was rising, painting the sky in muted golds and grays. He wondered if the world knew he felt smaller than he ever had. Silence stretched between them, dense as fog. Finally, he said quietly, "Why did you save me?" Nia gave a short, exhale-like laugh, devoid of humor. "Because I'm a federal agent, not a monster." Then, more softly but not kinder, "And because I don't get to choose who deserves CPR." He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Her restraint, her professionalism. It only made his own actions feel worse. Nia walked closer, stopping beside his bed. "You asked to see me," she said. "Now talk." He studied her face. Every line, every angle, every shadow seemed carved from discipline. But beneath it, he sensed something else. A faint, reluctant curiosity. It made him braver than he should have been. "I want to fix what I broke," he said. "You can't." "Then let me try." She folded her arms. "Redemption isn't a negotiation, Adrian. I'm not negotiating. He stopped, searching for the right word, something he'd never had to use in his life. Asking. Nia tilted her head slightly. It was the closest thing she'd shown to surprise since entering the room. For the first time, Adrian allowed himself to confront the truth that had been following him like a shadow. He didn't want redemption because it made him look good. He wanted redemption because, in Nia's eyes, he finally saw the man he could have been if he hadn't been raised on cruelty. But she wasn't swayed. She leaned in just enough for him to feel the weight of her presence. "Your apology doesn't erase your behavior," she said, "and it won't erase what I found in your financial history." A cold wave crashed through him. "What did you find?" "Older files," she said. "Deeper records. Transactions you thought were destroyed." His pulse spiked. "Which ones?" She didn't answer. Her silence hit harder than any accusation. Adrian looked away, rubbing his forehead with trembling fingers. "You don't understand what was happening then?" "Then explain," she said. He hesitated. The memories clawed at him. His father's brutal expectations, the ruthless empire he'd been forced to inherit, the choices he made to survive a world that praised power and mocked compassion. But the moment he opened his mouth, he realized Nia didn't want excuses. And, strangely, he didn't want to give them. His voice cracked. "I can't change the past." "No," she said, "but you built your present on it." She pulled a second folder from her bag, thicker than the first. "Your employees are scared of you. Your executives mimic your cruelty. Your entire ecosystem is rotten because you taught it to be." He ran a hand through his hair. "Lost." "I know," he whispered. Her eyes flickered, just a flicker, at the admission. "And what are you going to do about it?" she asked. "I don't know yet," he said, "but I want the chance to learn." Nia studied him as if trying to see whether the words were scaffolding for manipulation, or the start of a person rebuilding himself. There was something wounded in both of them, something unspoken. Two people shaped by different kinds of pain, staring through mirrors neither wanted to face. Finally, she stepped back. Change requires consequences. "I'm not running," he said. "Not from you." "Good," she replied, "because consequences are coming." She moved toward the door, but paused with her hand on the frame. "You're trying," she said quietly. "I see that." A breath. "But I don't trust it yet." "Will you?" he asked. Her grip tightened on the door. "That depends on who you become when nobody is watching." Then she left. The room felt colder without her. Adrian leaned back, chest tight, not from pain but from a strange mixture of relief and dread. Nia wasn't giving him forgiveness. She wasn't giving him condemnation either. She was giving him a chance to face himself. For a man who had spent his entire life avoiding that mirror, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. He didn't know how long he lay there, staring at the ceiling, replaying every word she said. But the quiet was shattered when his phone buzzed violently on the bedside table. He grabbed it. A notification glowed across the screen. A video, posted anonymously, already exploding online. The thumbnail showed the evidence room, the torn shirt, his hand gripping Nia, her body twisting away. Adrian's stomach dropped. Then he pressed play, and the nation began to burn. The video didn't spread, it detonated. Within hours, every news anchor, every blogger, every anonymous account hiding behind a cartoon avatar was dissecting the same 20 seconds. Adrian Cade tearing an FBI agent's shirt in a sealed room, her body twisting away, his face twisted with rage. It looped endlessly, a visual indictment replaying on millions of screens. And with every replay, the world grew louder. Outside his headquarters, protesters flooded the sidewalks. Homemade signs, bullhorns, chants that shook the windows. "Accountability now! Justice for Agent Hart! No more billionaires above the law!" Their voices rose like heat from asphalt, a collective fury aimed at one man. Adrian watched from his office window, feeling the weight of every shout press against the glass. His lawyers paced behind him, anxious, desperate. "We can spin this," one insisted. "Say it's edited. Say she provoked you." "Or you had a panic attack," another suggested. "Play the victim. People eat that up." A third leaned closer. "Destroy the remaining evidence. If the DOJ finds the deeper files—" "No." The word came out sharper than he meant, but solid. Final. Adrian turned from the window, eyes cold, voice steady. "I'm not lying, and I'm not destroying anything." The lawyers stared at him as if he'd suddenly started speaking another language. "Adrian," one whispered, "if you confess, they'll crucify you." He let the silence hang. Let them feel it. "Maybe I deserve it." The words surprised even him. They tasted like surrender, but also like truth. When he stepped out of the elevator into the press hall, the world met him with an explosion of flashbulbs. Cameras fired like lightning, each burst freezing him mid-step, exposing every line on his face, every crack he'd tried to hide. The podium stood under the harsh glare of studio lights, a public execution stage dressed as a press conference. Behind the curtain, Nia watched. She wasn't dressed for spectacle. Dark suit, hair tied back, expression carved from steel. But inside, something churned. Too many emotions layered on top of each other, none of them welcome. She didn't want to be here, didn't want to see him, didn't want to feel anything that complicated her sense of justice. Yet she stayed. Adrian reached the microphone. His fingers trembled once, barely noticeable, except to Nia, who had watched them steady during CPR. He leaned in. "I won't be taking questions today," he began. His voice was lower than usual, stripped of its usual arrogance. "I'm here to tell the truth." Reporters quieted. The room shifted. "I assaulted a federal agent," he said. "I abused my position. I created a culture of fear inside my own walls. I've lied, manipulated, cut corners, and hurt people who couldn't fight back." The confession rippled through the room. Shock, disbelief, satisfaction, all colliding into a collective intake of breath. Adrian continued. "I will cooperate fully with the DOJ's review. I will open my records, my accounts, my private servers, everything." Cameras clicked violently. A reporter shouted, "Are you admitting the financial crimes as well?" Adrian met their gaze. "I'm admitting that Agent Hart was right, and I'm admitting that if she hadn't stood against me, none of this would have come to light." A murmur rolled across the hall. Nia's fingers curled at her sides. He was doing it, saying it, out loud, in front of the world. But then Adrian inhaled, and something in his posture shifted. Not rehearsed, not strategic, but raw. "I need to say something else," he said. To her. Every camera swung toward the backstage curtain. Nia's breath caught. Adrian looked directly into the lens, as if speaking through it. "Agent Hart," he said softly, "I don't expect forgiveness, but you saved my life, and not just the attack. You saved me from the man I became. You didn't look away. You didn't retaliate. You held me accountable in a way no one ever has." His voice cracked. The room froze. "You broke me open," he said, "and I needed to break." The silence afterward was so heavy it felt like a physical force pressing against everyone's chest. Behind the curtain, Nia shut her eyes, jaw clenched. She didn't want to feel the sting behind her ribs, didn't want the seesaw of emotions, anger, relief, disbelief, empathy, all swarming beneath her armor. She had been prepared for excuses, spin, manipulation. Not this, not sincerity, not vulnerability laid bare in front of a nation ready to tear him apart. Reporters erupted. "Will you resign? Are you stepping down? Are you facing charges?" Adrian raised a hand. "Yes," he said simply. "To all of it. I'm stepping down from my companies. I'm turning over control to an independent board. I'm facing whatever comes next. Another explosion of flashbulbs swallowed him. Nia felt her heartbeat slow in an uneven rhythm. She didn't know if she believed him, didn't know if the change was real or a desperate grasp at dignity. But the words, they weren't for the cameras. She knew how to distinguish performance from truth, and this wasn't a performance. Not today. As Adrian stepped back from the podium, the room erupted into chaos. Reporters shouting, microphones thrust forward, security forming a protective barrier. But his eyes searched the room until they found the curtain where she stood hidden. He didn't smile, didn't gesture, just looked. A single, quiet acknowledgement. Nia exhaled slowly. Her heartbeat didn't settle. It flickered like a light caught between on and off. Her partner, Agent Mendez, stepped beside her. "You okay?" he asked. Nia didn't answer immediately. "I don't know," she murmured. Outside, the protesters' voices swelled again, loud enough to shake the building, loud enough to remind her that justice was bigger than any personal feeling, bigger than sympathy, bigger than whatever strange thread now tied her fate to Adrian's downfall. And yet, as she watched Adrian escorted away by federal officers, something inside her shifted. Small, fragile, impossible to name, but present. Because consequences had arrived. And he didn't run. She stepped back from the curtain, letting the noise fade behind her. The nation was burning with outrage, but her mind drifted somewhere quieter, somewhere more complicated. There was still one more chapter between them. One more reckoning neither could avoid. And the aftermath would reveal what kind of man Adrian Cade would become when the world finally stopped watching. The world didn't end after the scandal, though for a while it felt like it might. But months passed, and the noise faded into something quieter, something that looked a lot like rebuilding. Adrian Cade, once the king of mirrored skyscrapers and impossible wealth, now worked inside a modest glass building that barely rose above the trees. No entourage, no private elevator, just a man learning how to live without the armor he once mistook for a soul. He walked through his downsized office with a slow, measured pace. Employees greeted him with nods, not fear, not forced politeness, just acknowledgement. And each time he felt something unfamiliar settle under his ribs. Peace, maybe, or the ache of recognizing how late he'd arrived to his own humanity. In his hand he held a small, carefully wrapped object. The weight of it was light, but the history behind it felt heavy enough to change the tilt of his shoulders. Today wasn't a business visit. It wasn't legal. It wasn't strategic. It was overdue. Across town, Nia Hart stood at the window of her new office inside the federal complex, watching clouds gather over the city. She looked different these days, harder in some ways, softer in others. She had helped rewrite use-of-force protocols, helped reshape how federal agents documented corporate crimes. Her name now carried a kind of gravity inside the bureau. But she hadn't forgotten the day that started it all. She couldn't. The echo of ripping fabric still lingered somewhere deep, not as a wound, but as a reminder. When her intercom buzzed, she assumed it was another meeting request. Instead, the receptionist's voice said, "Agent Hart, you have a visitor. He says you'll understand." A pause. Then, "It's Adrian Cade." For a moment, Nia didn't move. Not because of fear, not anger, just the quiet shock of realizing how much time had passed, and yet how close the memory still sat. She stepped into the hallway, and there he was. Adrian stood straighter than before, but his posture carried none of the old arrogance. His expression was calm, respectful, almost hesitant. He held the small wrapped object like someone offering a fragile truth. "Nia," he said softly. She nodded once. "Adrian." They walked into her office. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing the moment into something private. Neither sat immediately. They simply stood there, as if adjusting to the air between them. Adrian finally held out the package. "This is yours." She didn't reach for it right away. "What is it?" He hesitated, then unwrapped it himself. Inside was her badge holder, the one he had torn, but now the leather was stitched with careful precision, each thread intentional, each seam restored. Nia stared at it for a long moment. "You kept it." "I didn't mean to," he said. "At first, but after everything, I couldn't throw it away. I couldn't pretend it didn't matter." His voice lowered. "I thought maybe it should be repaired by the person who broke it." She didn't take it immediately. She watched him instead, the way he shifted his weight, the faint shadows under his eyes, the humility woven through every gesture. This wasn't the man who had lunged at her in a sealed room. This wasn't the man who believed fear was currency. He looked older, smaller, but somehow more real. "Why bring it to me now?" she asked. "Because it took me this long to understand what I actually owe you," he said. She folded her arms, studying him. "And what's that?" "The truth," he answered. "Not the one I told the cameras. The one I needed to tell myself." Silence expanded, delicate and heavy. He continued quietly. "You didn't destroy me, Nia. You revealed me. I thought I'd built a life, but it was just a fortress made of fear. And when it collapsed, I realized I'd never actually lived inside it." Nia's expression softened, just a fraction, but enough for him to notice. "I'm not asking for anything," he added quickly. "Not forgiveness, not approval. I just needed you to know that I'm trying, and that I'm not trying for the cameras this time." Nia stepped closer, close enough to see the sincerity in the fine lines around his eyes. "Trying isn't the finish line, Adrian. It's the starting point." He nodded. "I know." "And growth," she added. "It's not a chapter. It's a lifetime sentence." He released a breath that sounded almost like relief. "Then I'll serve it." For the first time since he walked in, Nia picked up the badge holder. She turned it over gently in her hands, feeling the new stitches, the fresh leather, the ghosts of that day. "You did a good job repairing it," she said. "I didn't repair it," he replied. "I learned how to. Then I did it myself." Another silence, this one warmer, more human. Nia placed the badge holder on her desk. "Thank you," she said. "Not absolution, not closure, just acknowledgement." He inclined his head. "Thank you for not letting me stay the man I was." Their eyes met one last time. No tension, no rivalry, no lingering storm. Just two people connected by a moment that changed them both in ways they never expected. Adrian stepped back toward the door. "Goodbye, Nia." "Goodbye, Adrian." He left quietly. No grand exit. No last attempt to sway her. And somehow that simplicity carried more weight than any speech he could have given. When the door closed behind him, Nia returned to the window. Outside, the clouds were breaking apart, letting threads of sunlight slip through. She touched the badge holder once more, feeling the roughness of the stitched leather beneath her fingertips. Justice had done its work, not through punishment alone, but through truth and consequence, and a fight that forced a powerful man to face himself. Change wasn't guaranteed, but it was possible, and sometimes that possibility was enough to shift the whole world by an inch.